Okay, our mission today is pretty clear, quite laser-focused, actually. We are going to dissect that first big television debate of the Irish presidential campaign, really extract the key insights, the nuggets you need to get a handle on this race.
Yeah, and it was quite a discussion because the candidates, they really had to wrestle with, well, everything from local identity issues, the housing crisis, right through to some pretty high-stakes foreign policy stuff. It really pushes the boundaries of what an Irish president, can or maybe even should talk about.
Absolutely. So let's quickly unpack who we're talking about here, the main players. We've got three distinct candidates really leading the pack. First, there's independent TD Catherine Connolly. And just quickly for anyone listening internationally, TD is Teach Tadala, like an MP, a member of parliament. She's got backing from Sinn Féin and other left-wing parties.
Right. Then you have Heather Humphreys. She's a former senior minister from Fine Gael. Fine Gael being, traditionally more center-right. And the third is the Fianna Fáil candidate, Jim Gavin. Now, he might be best known outside pure politics as the incredibly successful former manager of the Dublin GAA football team.
Yeah, I mean, that GAA background is interesting, isn't it? It gives him this sort of national profile, maybe an image of unifying leadership that goes beyond just party lines. So the winner gets a 7-year term, takes them up to 2032, and they can run for a second term. But before we dive into the actual debate points, maybe we should just frame the job itself. What exactly is the Irish presidency?
Yeah, that's really crucial context. The president of Ireland is head of state, but importantly, not the head of government. Constitutionally, their actual executive powers are, very limited.
Right.
The main role is, you could say, ceremonial, representing Ireland abroad, making sure the Constitution is being followed, acting as this kind of nonpartisan figurehead at big national moments.
So when candidates get into strong political positions, what they're really campaigning for is what? Moral influence, setting the agenda.
Exactly that. They're aiming for the bully pulpit, not the legislative levers. They can't make laws.
Got it. Okay, mechanics, voting. Who actually gets to vote in this?
So our sources confirm it's strictly citizens living in the Republic of Ireland. That's about, 3.5 million potential voters?
And the voting system itself, it's not first past the post.
No, it's proportional representation. Specifically, the single transferable vote, STV. Voters rank the candidates 1, 2, 3, and so on, which means those second and third preference votes can become absolutely vital. It's designed for maximum representation, really.
And the count gets underway Saturday, October 25th. Now, the presenter, Kieran Cuddihy, he went straight for the salary question, always a bit of a political flashpoint. All three confirmed they would take the full whack, which is roughly £350,000 sterling.
Yes, but what was interesting was how they immediately tried to, manage the optics of that figure, because the job is so symbolic, right? Connolly said she'd give a substantial amount back to community projects, things like that. Humphreys took a different tack, said she'd give back her ministerial pension instead.
Ah, interesting. That's a political calculation right there, isn't it? Acknowledging the big salary, but trying to show some kind of public service ethos or symbolic give back, especially when the role itself doesn't control tax or spending. It really sets the tone. This is about ethos, not direct policy power.
Absolutely. And that whole ethos thing was tested straight away when they moved on to the future of Ireland. Unity. Identity. Now, all three said they believe in a united Ireland. That's probably the easy part politically. The differences emerged in how they talked about getting there.
Right, let's break that down. Humphreys first to get. The fine Gael background. She called herself a proud Ulsterwoman. Supports unity, yes, but she was the one sounding a note of pragmatism. Acknowledged there'd have to be compromises. Specifically mentioned things like the national anthem, maybe the flag.
Yeah, and she stressed that those compromises, not for the president to decide, that's for a future government, working cross-border. Her key phrase was about needing to extend the hand of friendship.
That's quite cautious, pragmatic language, especially highlighting potential changes to symbols like the anthem or flag. It almost sounds like a signal to unionists in the North, doesn't it? That a future republic wouldn't just, erase their identity.
It could be read that way, yes. A nod towards negotiation on those really sensitive points.
Okay, Jim Gavin. His approach seemed to lean on his non-political background. Praised the Good Friday Agreement, mentioned his professional life takes him north regularly, said he understands the concerns on both sides of the community. His pitch was about building relationships, frequent engagement.
And that constant engagement, meeting people, that is something the president can actually do. It fits the role. Connolly, though, her focus seemed more on maybe speed and active diplomacy. She actually expressed hope for a united Ireland within her own potential term.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Yeah. So she's already met communities across the divide and vowed to use the presidency's voice by actively going up to Northern Ireland and meeting different communities.
But does that raise a question? If she vows such active diplomacy, does that risk sort of stepping on the toes of the Taoiseach, the government, the official diplomatic channels? The president's meant to be above the day-to-day politics, right?
Well, that's the inherent tension of the office, isn't it? They campaign promising to do more, even if the Constitution limits their formal power to legislate more.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Symbols again, but closer to home. Section 2 got into the controversy around the Irish flag, the tricolour. This came up because some councils have stopped anti-immigration campaigners from using the flag at protests.
Yeah, and this really forced them onto tricky ground about who owns national symbols, what do they represent. Gavin was very clear, very proud of the tricolour, positioned it as inclusive. Humphreys kept it simpler, called it a symbol of unity, which again fits that unifying presidential ideal.
But the language around immigration itself got quite strong. Connolly, she called the slogan, "Ireland is full," which you hear from some campaigners, she called it abhorrent.
That is strong language, yeah, especially for someone aiming for a role that's supposed to unite everyone. Humphreys, interestingly, saw the president's role here as being a counter voice, said the president needs to speak to everybody and actively dispel those myths around immigration.
So using that soft power again, the president as the nation's chief mythbuster or unifier, because they don't have the hard executive power.
Precisely.
Now, speaking of domestic issues, the housing crisis. Arguably the biggest social issue in Ireland. Our sources say it was discussed alongside foreign policy.
Yeah, they had to address it. Even though the president can't build houses or change planning laws, ignoring it would be, well, political suicide. You saw Connolly reflecting her backers, promising to be an advocate for the marginalized, talking about a united republic achieved by tackling these core social problems together.
And Humphreys and Gavin.
More focus on using the office to highlight national unity, maybe ingenuity, to tackle the problem, indirectly, of course. The key thing for all of them was showing they care, showing they understand the depth of the crisis, even if they can't personally solve it from the auras.
Okay, now this is where things took a really sharp turn, didn't they? Into global politics, foreign policy hot takes. Gaza.
This is fascinating because traditionally, the president's foreign policy role is quite limited, hosting state visits, representing Ireland neutrally.
Exactly. But we saw three quite different and politically charged approaches here, clearly signaling how they'd use that moral platform. Connolly seemed to focus mainly on the humanitarian angle, hope for peace in Palestine, concerned about the consequences for humanity. She avoided taking a really hard diplomatic stance.
Okay. But Jim Gavin, he went much further, quite direct language. He stated flat out that the Israeli government is committing war crimes every day. And even added he was proud to see Palestinian flags being flown around the republic. Yeah, that's a statement carrying immense political weight, especially for a potential head of state aiming for nonpartisanship. It definitely aligns with a large segment of Irish public opinion, but it certainly challenges that traditional idea of presidential neutrality on such contested global issues.
And how did Humphreys handle it? Contrast that.
Humphreys suggested something more concrete, though still not something she could enact herself. She supported the idea of passing laws to ban imports from occupied territories into Ireland.
Even acknowledging the potential economic risk.
Yes. She acknowledged it could carry a risk to international investment. That makes it a pretty powerful statement. It's basically saying a moral stance outweighs potential economic fallout. It shows how far she might be willing to push the influence of the presidency into really political foreign policy territory. The president doesn't pass laws, obviously, but publicly backing such a move sends a huge signal about her priorities, what she'd push for behind closed doors.
So despite all that contention, the closing statements kind of circled back to unity, didn't they? Humphreys promising to be a president for all, Connolly aiming for that united republic through working together, Gavin vowing to represent every section of society, be a voice for all. They all hit that necessary note of unification at the end.
Absolutely. And if you sort of zoom out from the specifics, what this whole debate really highlighted is that core tension in the Irish presidency. You had candidates discussing everything from, changing the flag to accusing foreign governments of war crimes. It just shows they don't see the office as just this constitutional box. They see it as a platform, a way to lead the national conversation, shape the moral agenda, really stretch the boundaries of those limited formal powers.
So wrapping this up, what should you, the listener, take away as you watch the rest of this campaign? Here's maybe a final thought to chew on, based on what we've heard. Given the actual job description of the Irish president, head of state, constitutional guardian, representing Ireland abroad, how much should their views on really divisive global issues like Gaza influence your vote? How do you weigh that against their stated commitment to national unity right here at home and overseeing the Constitution? It's almost a choice between wanting a moral leader on the world stage versus a steady constitutional guardian domestically.
Yeah, definitely something to think about as that STV count gets closer. We've tried to give you the core points and the feel of this first key debate anyway.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.